What's the time period for when you have to stop eating, or when you're not allowed to eat much?
Well, it's a certain number of hours within the day. Every year it changes depending on when Pesach falls. It's on our schedule, which will be, I've put out before, but I'm putting it out again. I don't remember the exact time, but it's
the day of.
But I think it's like burning matzah, and which means owning matzah, is until I think 12:01 this year. I'm approximating, so we have to really look it up. And then about an hour earlier, an hour and a quarter earlier, is the last time you can eat matzah.
Okay.
And, I eat the chametz, right? I'm sorry. That's you can eat
chametz. That includes, so you can't eat matzah from.
Well, there's different opinions. You can't eat matzah on Erev Pesach at all.
Okay.
At all. From as soon as Erev Pesach begins. Right? There are others, like my custom, depending where you come from, where they didn't eat matzah for a month. From Purim on.
Oh, Purim on.
And we don't have matzah at all.
And I don't like challah like I love my matzah.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on that part? So, again, we try to stay away from egg matzah because it's really not preferred to use at all unless you're not well.
Is there a way to make your own matzah? Can you buy the?
You can make your own matzah, but you need a matzah oven, because the important thing with making matzah is that it has to go from the moment you add water to the flour to the finished product within 18 minutes. That's not easy to do.
Oh no.
No. Try it with your challah.
Why is it 18 minutes anyhow?
Because the Torah tells us that it takes 18 minutes for the catalyst within the yeast to cause the dough to rise. Try it out. I mean, like now.
Chabad still doing it?
I don't know.
The extra they always have them. Yeah, they did the extra
Okay. Let's take a look at moror. So moror is the bitter herb. What is the best bitter herb? So there's a number of options of what you can use. The most common are horseradish and romaine lettuce. You should not, under any circumstance, use whole horseradish. You'll get sick. I mean, it doesn't make you more religious to do that. I mean, people sometimes think if I do something absurd, that makes me more religious. It's absurd to eat the amount of moror that you have to eat that by using whole horseradish. You don't do that. To go and take a horseradish like from the ground and clean it and then take a piece and eat that's not good. It'll make you sick, and you shouldn't do it. That's not what it means. The preferred is one of two things: either ground horseradish, which you should grind 24 hours in advance and allow it to sit open so that it loses some of its bite, or romaine lettuce. Those are the two most common. If you're going to use grated horseradish, as I write in this sheet, you need 27 cc's. Right? You take a look at how much that is. That's how much you use to fulfill the mitzvah of eating moror. If you eat romaine lettuce with the leaves, it's a piece of approximately 8 by 6 inches. If you know a piece of paper this paper is 8.5 by 11. So 8 by 6 is a little bit more than half of this sheet of paper.
Can you use the centers of the romaine?
As long as it's clean for bugs, there's no reason why not. Okay. The big problem with the romaine lettuce that makes it less preferable is the amount of effort put into cleaning it for the bugs. So you can, of course, if you buy the bug-free versions, which you can get in the stores, it's more expensive, but it saves you a lot of effort. If you're not prepared to do that, you can buy regular romaine lettuce, but it's a lot of work. It's a whole thing to go through and to soak it and to look at it and to check it. But each family does as they see fit. But if you want to use horseradish, again, use grated horseradish and grate it for your own sake at least a day in advance and allow it to sit. And if you want to use a mixture of the two, that's also acceptable. You can put some horseradish on your romaine lettuce. Because I know most of us did not know that there were certain amounts when we were growing up.
That's right.
And then so you just had a piece of horseradish, right? You had a taste of horseradish. So we have sort of a feeling that if you don't have some horseradish, then you're not having a Seder.
Do you use like the prepared horseradishes that are in the bottle?
No, because it's got all types of other things in it.
That's what I was wondering, if that's what you were talking about.
No, I'm talking about grating it yourself. So if you want, you can take romaine lettuce and put a little bit of horseradish on it. That's fine. That's able, and you can subtract a little bit of romaine lettuce because of it. But you can't. Right, you really should not take a bite out of a horseradish. It'll really make you sick. Because the amount of 27 cc's is not that small. Right? It's not enormous, but it's certainly enough that it'll make you sick.
I have a question. My brother has always made horseradish, but he's also added a couple of ingredients to make it palatable. That's not acceptable?
Yeah, you really shouldn't. It should be 100% pure horseradish, and the way you make it palatable is by leaving it out for a day. Right, if you leave it in an open bin, and over the course of a day, it'll lose about half of its bite.
So you don't cook it at all, though? You just grind it?
Correct. It's raw. Okay, the next one is karpas and salt water. So karpas is the vegetable that you use. It's sort of, some opinions in the Haggadah say it's like an appetizer. It could be parsley, for instance, you might recognize it that way. It could also be a piece of potato. Those are two of the most common things. You only eat a little bit. You're not supposed to eat what we call a kazayat, which is a minimum amount, because then you have a question about making a blessing, an after blessing. So you're only supposed to have a taste. So you take a little bit of parsley or a little bit of potato, and you're supposed to dunk it in salt water. Now, salt water presents a bit of a problem, because you cannot make salt water on Yontif or on Shabbos. You have to make it before, because the act of making the salt water is not allowed on Yontif.
On Yontif?
Yes. So you have to make it before Yontif.
Why not? Because we can cook on Yontif.
I know, but it's not cook. You're not cooking. You're not cooking.
But if it's a question of dissolving, we put sugar in our coffee.
I'd have to be honest, I'd have to look up the reason. The source that I looked at didn't tell me why, but I know from numerous sources, as long as I've been studying, that was always the case. You're not allowed to dissolve it in the water, salt into the water, so you need to do it before Yontif starts.
So
if you use parsley, is there a way to wash parsley properly?
Sure, I don't know all the processes, but sure there is. I use parsley.
Well, how do you do it ahead of time? Where would you?
You just take a cup, put with water, and put salt in it.
For the second night?
Yeah, same thing. We just have, you don't use that much salt water, right? You don't use that much of it, so you just save it over from one night to the next.
But it would be so good to know the reason, because there are so many things that we do, even on Shabbat. Like
no problem. I can look it up, but I can't look it up at this moment.
Yeah, exactly. You know, she's making a comparison. We put sugar in our coffee. That's okay. But you can't put salt in water.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can't do it for this purpose.
Because it's bitter?
I'll have to look it up, but I know that we can't do it. So we have to do it beforehand. So you set it up beforehand. That's the only issue with it.
I think it's for pickling reasons.
What?
Pickling reasons. You're not supposed to pickle it. I think I read that. You're not supposed to pickle or something, so when you're mixing salt with water, the purpose of that is usually to pickle something or to put something in it, and it might cook.
Okay, well, I'll look it up for you and answer you. We're not going to have a fourth class, but I'll be glad to tell you. Okay, leaning. You know, during certain of the mitzvahs that we do at the Seder, you're supposed to lean. Right? When you drink the wine, you're supposed to lean. When you eat the matzah, you're supposed to lean. Not when you eat the moror. But it says in the Haggadah when. And the question always comes up about who has to lean. The men have to lean, women have to lean, children have to lean. So according to the letter of the law, women are not required to lean. Women are allowed to lean. What it says is that women of stature used to lean. What does that mean? Is because the idea of leaning comes from, remember those movies you used to see where they had the guys laying on the couches and the women peeling grapes for them, the slave women, right? The Greeks. That's what this is. The people in the days of the Mishnah, they used to eat reclining, and they would have their own little table next to them, and that's how they would eat. Right? They didn't have someone peeling grapes for them, but they would recline, kind of like on a lounge. And who was that? That was only the upper crust, like the people of the high society. And on Pesach, that's who we are. Right? We're royalty, because God freed us. We're not slaves anymore. Because of that, we lean. So they said, so do women lean? So it says women who were royalty, who were dignified women, also leaned, but they're not required to. The custom today is that women are allowed to, but not required. Right? That's at least the Ashkenazi custom. So if you want to lean, you can lean. But what that means is that if you forgot, then you don't have to do it again. But if a man forgets, he does. And it's very common at the Afikomen that the men forget. People forget. They forget to lean.
By that time already.
Right? But if a woman does it, she doesn't have to go back. So leaning is not a necessity. All right. We mentioned at the beginning always to the left. If you lean to the right, it can cause food to go down the wrong tube, and it's not good for you. Even if you're left-handed, you always lean to the left. All right, and leaning to the right does not fulfill the mitzvah, and it's unhealthy, because the food goes down your esophagus. So, the first Seder preparations. I was mentioning before, as much preparations for the Seder as you can do before Yom Tov starts, the better it is. Certainly the table that should be set, any of the food preparations. I don't mean just cooking, I mean all the stuff for the Seder. As I said, like measuring out moror, measuring out matzah, as much as you want to do, right? You should do it and try to do it in advance, or you could have your husband do it. Someone should try to do it in advance, because the more you do of those things, the less time you have to sit around. You know how long it takes when everybody's going and you're waiting for them to make the hamotzi, and everybody gets their certain amount of matzah. So you're waiting for the guys breaking it up, making sure it's the right amount, and giving it out to each person. It takes a long time. Same thing with the moror, same thing with the korach, same thing with the afikomen. Each one of those things could add 5 to 10 minutes to your Seder, and if you add it up, that adds an hour. So if you do those in advance, as much as you're able to, it's good. You don't have to. But the more that you do like that, like for instance, what I do is that we always have a crowd, so when everyone goes to wash their hands, I stay back and start organizing all the matzah for everybody. So that way when they're done washing their hands, I'll go wash my hands, and we make a motzi. All I got to do is take a piece of the matzah that we use for a motzi, and grab a pile and give it to one, and grab a pile and give it to the next, and so forth. And that saves quite a bit of time. And it's very helpful. Because that, like I said before, there is no mitzvah to stay up all night on Pesach. There is a mitzvah to read the Haggadah. There's a mitzvah to talk about going out of Egypt even all night. But if you can do the same amount in less time, then do it, or do more. But whatever it is, you don't need to use your time unnecessarily. So, and also the biggest problem that everybody has with their Seder is the amount of time it takes from getting at the door to getting to the seat of the Seder and start saying Kiddush. In other words, the people, they talk, and they do this, and they do that, and they get this, and they get that, right? All of that stuff, it adds to the time. If by the time we come home from shul, now that they've decided in Canada to change, daylight savings time, Pesach will always be late. You will never have Pesach before the clock changes anymore. So it's always going to start late. And on that basis, if you come home from shul, and you come and you come in the house, and your guests come in the house, and it takes a half hour before you sit down, then you started a half hour later than you had to. Right? If you can start 5 minutes after you come in, you save yourself a lot of time. Remember, we have the number one goal for the Seder is to educate our children. The longer our children are awake, the less they're going to learn. There's no question. I always say that this is a perfect indication of how God is reminding us that we need Mashiach. Because while we're here in Canada, we start our Seder so late at night, we're not able to accomplish the goal of educating our children. Because they're not going to be thinking straight at 11 o'clock at night when we're having our Seder. So, you see, for in Israel, the clocks don't change like they do here. They're much earlier. No. So you can have a Seder at a reasonable hour.
Why didn't they ask you for permission to change the clock?
Yeah, well, there was actually a news report that an Orthodox man filed suit against the government because it made it so he couldn't daven in the morning because it was so late. By the time it got light, he had to go to work, and they were infringing his freedom of speech, but nothing came of it because it was sort of frivolous. Yeah.
You're talking about educating children. What about when at Seder you have elderly grandparents who, for medical reasons or for whatever reasons, they cannot stay on? Is there any leniency to start earlier?
You can't start earlier, but if there's a need for people to finish early, you can go quickly. Understand the idea. One of my teachers, Rabbi Molesky, he's no longer with us, but one of the things that he was always very stringent about was that the Seder is not the time for everyone to expound on all of their ideas. The Seder is you've already done that. You already learned about the Seder. You learned about the Haggadah. Now you say the Haggadah. You say it. You say the Haggadah, and if you have kids and they don't understand it, you explain it to them. But you don't go around the table asking every person, "Do you have something to say? And do you have something to say? And do you have something?" Right? Which we do, right? Which is very common. So there's nothing wrong with doing what we do. But his point was, if you have people like you're talking about, elderly people who can't stay up that late, or young kids who can't stay up that late, there is no necessity to expound on every part of the Haggadah. You can simply come in, you can make Kiddush, you can go through it, and then after you get to the point where all of these people have to leave, then you can go back and stay up all night and expound on the Haggadah. It doesn't have to be at that moment. There's a mitzvah that night to do it. So I always say, whenever it comes to have a stringency, any stringency in Jewish law, if you want to accept a stringency on yourself, then accept one that affects you, not that affects everyone else. Right? I tell guys all the time, they tell me, I want to start keeping 72 minutes after sunset, that Shabbos should be over. Right? Because we keep here in the shul 45 minutes. But there's an opinion that says 72 minutes is better. It's a stricter opinion. She says, I want to keep 72. I said, well, that's fine. You want to keep 72, but does your wife want to go out on Saturday night? Are your kids like jumping at the bit after Shabbos? If that's the case, you should realize that you're keeping this extra half hour might just be a nice extra thing for you to do, but for your family, you might be really affecting them negatively. You have to be careful. Right? It's the same with many of these issues. One should be very careful when you want to accept something upon yourself that it has an effect on you, not on everyone else, because they didn't ask for this. Right? So it's the same thing here. So we can't start. I have it as number 9. Start eating early. I meant starting early. You can't start saying Kiddush until nightfall, and I have on our schedule what time that is. You just can't, because it's not Passover. It's the day before Passover. But as soon as Passover begins, you do not have to spend hours getting through it. What you want to make sure is that everybody has some understanding of the Haggadah. You're transmitting the information, that they eat the matzah, the moror, have their 4 cups of wine. That's really the important thing. My friend Rabbi Becher once made a thing called the 15-minute Seder, where he was able to show you how, it's probably more like 30 minutes, but he called it the 15-minute, where you could actually do the entire Haggadah in 30 minutes. Yeah, well, because you only said the essential parts, and there's a reason. What if you're in a hospital? So someone's wife's having a baby, you're in a hospital. You're going to give a 5-hour Seder in a hospital? You do a 30-minute Seder. You do everything you have to do. Right? It's not saying that recommending it, but if there's a need, you do it. Yes?
So does that mean there's a key point in the Haggadah, but you don't have to read all the parts that sort of say Rabbi so-and-so had different opinions and that opinion?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that you need to read the Haggadah. But the way that most of us do it is that we read the Haggadah and then we expound on every part. Well, you'll have, the 10-year-old kid will have his homemade Haggadah that he made in school with all of these articles in them, which they didn't write. They haven't ever even read, but they want to get up and stand up on the chair and read it. And every kid wants to do it, and then all the adults want to do it, and everybody else wants to do something. And you have 5 people doing the 4 questions, not just 1 kid doing the 4 questions. All of that is nice, and if you're able to do it, you should do it. But if you can't do it, you don't have to. Right? That's the point. But you do need to read the Haggadah.
But each child has to sing his song, too.
Okay, so everyone's got their stuff.
Work very hard on those.
We're
just all singing together. All the kids singing together. They're happy.
We used to spend all the time, and my husband has, he sings Ellie, the way Ellie used to sing. The Manish Tana, and Oh Pharaoh, all the kids song.
Right, so
every single song. And I mean, it's this is what Pesach's all about.
Right.
The way your kids.
I used to.
That's right, but sometimes
you don't have 20 guests.
Sometimes we're not privileged, though, that we can do that. Sometimes you have special needs. People come over with special needs who are elderly, who aren't well, whatever it is, and then you have to be able to do otherwise. On a normal circumstance, you're prepared, right? Well, you should prepare. You should to be as rested as you can be, and then you stay up late. I mean, we know that's going to happen. But if you're not able to, and then you have to improvise, and you are allowed to go quicker, right? There are even other times when you go even faster than that, but those are not the way it should be, right? In other words, if you had a real circumstance like Nelia's question, you could actually cut out parts of the Haggadah, but you really shouldn't, right? And you're not really fulfilling it. But if there's a necessity, there are times when that's possible.
Is it okay to read it in English so that everyone at the table understands it?
Yeah, it's fine, and all of our liturgy, and anything of our liturgy, be it prayers or anything, there's no question that you can read it in English, and there's also no question it's preferable in Hebrew, because all of the things that we have, when they're written in Hebrew, they're written by people of prophetic vision. Many of them are prophets, real prophets. So every word they used had many meanings, and there was a specific word why they use a synonym for something, or they add a word, or subtract a word, or add a vav, or take out a vav, to say certain things. Some things you'll understand, some things you won't understand, but they're in there for a purpose. If you say it in English, it won't be in there, but you fulfill the mitzvah, right? You fulfill it. It's just like with prayer. When they announce, you should, how do they say it? You can pray in the language that you prefer. The truth is, you shouldn't pray. You should not do that. You should pray in Hebrew. If you don't know Hebrew, then you can pray in English.